Hello, everybody, and welcome into another episode of the Couch GMs podcast. It is Friday, January 19th, 2024. I'm your host, George Kerth, joined by the one and only Cody Roadcap. Cody, I think you're coming off of a high after last weekend. Give me your emotions.
How about them Cowboys? Where them boys at? That's all you need to know, dude. I'm living life right now. This Packers season has been tough at first. The little run got exciting, and literally the most stress-free I've ever been going into a divisional matchup because my expectations, they've already blown past what I thought the season was going to be. I'm just living in the moment.
It's amazing how if your team would have lost last week, you'd been like, that was a successful season. And I sat here and watched my Eagles lose in horrific fashion. And I'm like, that was the worst season I've been a part of in a while, despite 11 wins and a playoff appearance. Expectations in the NFL are a huge piece of how you feel at the end of a season, regardless of the outcome.
1,000%. Couldn't agree more.
So we'll have more to talk about Wild Card Weekend as we move into our show. But reminder, we have new episodes every Friday through the Super Bowl. And make sure you follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok at the Couch GMs to get involved in our DFS matchups throughout the playoffs. And you can always ask us questions, any kind of NFL, DFS, fantasy, whatever questions in our DMs on there, or drop them in the comments of the podcast or video you're watching. All right, Cody, like I said, why don't we sit back, relax, and chat?
Oh, I forgot that's my cue. Where's the button, Cody? Where's the button? Oh, I'm panicking. I'm falling apart. Let's hit it.
I'm going to have to try to find a way to make you hit a sound effect or another bumper or something really soon to see if you freak out again. That was pretty good.
Sorry, I was looking something up for our next segment while you were talking. First rule of podcast, prepare.
Yeah, Cody's trying to prepare mid-show, and that's not working too well because he's the person that hits all the fancy buttons. But first thing I want to talk about is just Wild Card Weekend in general. So we had 6 games. We had a game in such cold weather that people that were buying beers at the concession stands were literally freezing over by the time they got to their seats. Water was deep freezing as it came out of the coolers, which were technically heaters. We had one crazy upset that we already did mention with the Packers eliminating the Cowboys. We had the Eagles' demise coming to a peak at the end. So many things. So I'm sure we're going to hit a little bit of everything. Cody, do you want to lead us off? Where do you want to start?
Let's go in order of
Okay.
the playoff schedule a little bit. And we'll start with the big snowstorm that caused the game to move from Sunday to Saturday because that was the first thing that broke. But we'll get to that game in a second.
Sunday to Monday.
Sorry, Sunday to Monday. The days are so messed up for me. It's not even funny. But that Browns Texans game, where I think everybody, not everybody, but I would say majority of people thought the Browns Cinderella Joe Flacco story was just going to continue and roll on. And maybe that was hoping that they were going to face the Ravens in the next round or something. But CJ Stroud was like, no, guys, I'm legit. Here I am. I'm going to make some noise. He might have had a couple throws because I know there's been some back and forth online. If you're living, he had a 175.2 passer rating, which is almost perfect. It's 1.1 points off, but only had like a 77 grade from PFF. So there's been a lot of controversial, but it was because he threw.
I feel like PFF is a fraud anyway, but that's another topic for another time.
There was 2 turnover worthy plays, which those really ding your PFF rating, like a dropped interception, which if it was caught would have dropped his rating, but it wasn't. But he played lights out. That offense was incredible. We were watching the game together. We had our annual fantasy football announcing the champion, giving him his trophy. We're all going to watch some playoff football together. And I think all of us said at one point, like, all right, you've scored enough points, save some for the Ravens next week. Like, that game went completely different than how I expected. I didn't think the Texans had no shot, but I definitely didn't see the route that they put on Cleveland.
100%. And I think when we were previewing that game last week, I was giving the praise to CJ Stroud, how this team's going in the right direction, how much of I have excitement I have for their future. But I'm like, they don't have Tank Dell. They haven't been quite the same explosive offense since. The Browns are the number 1 defense in the NFL, and they put up 45 on the Browns in the playoffs. My only question would be, I mean, the Flacco magic ran out, but they rested their starters in week 18. And did that cause enough rust? Did that do enough to knock Flacco off of his hot streak? Like, we've seen teams before that seem like clear favorites in their conference take a week off, whether it's a bye week, resting starters in the last week because of seating being cleared, whatever, and then come out flat. And the Browns look to do exactly that.
Look, you meant the Browns, they rest their starters, they lost. The Rams, they rested their starters, they lost, where the Lions played theirs.
Yep.
The Eagles, they played their starters for what, 3 drives? I mean,
Yeah,
the
and
Eagles
lost
are
2 of them to injury and then rested their starters.
and yeah, they lost AJ Brown because they were playing him, rest of starters, and maybe one of their worst performances of the year.
Yeah.
And so I think that's an interesting storyline to watch as we move forward into divisional round when the 2 number 1 seeds both rested their starters. Do they come out flat? Do they have what
For
it
2
takes to
weeks now,
overcome? And it's
when you
been
think
an
about it.
extra week.
Yeah.
Yeah. They haven't played since week 17, basically.
Maybe the 2 weeks is better than the 1 week. Maybe they had more time to get in that mental space, less banged up. When you talk about players like McCaffrey, especially, who did finally get dinged up at the end of the year, getting the 2 weeks for the injury recovery is big. But like, maybe the 2 weeks is better than the 1 week. It could still affect them the same way. That's the storylines that I'm going to look at going into this weekend as well. So we can save that talk, though, for when we get to the actual preview of the games this weekend. But Texans, absolutely impressive. We'll see if their magical run can continue. But like your Packers, low expectation season that shows that they have a very bright future ahead of them.
Definitely do. And I thought one thing was interesting because, half only 8 teams are left. So there's, what's that, 24 other fan bases that are already looking onto the draft and already talking about it. And one person they're talking about the Justin Fields. Like, are they going to trade him? Are they going to take the number 1 pick? And they were like, it is so crucial to get your quarterback because nobody is complaining about the draft capital that the Texans gave up to go get CJ Stroud and Will Anderson after the impact they made this past year. So as we think about the draft and we talk about those draft picks, especially quarterback but nailing top end draft picks and getting results makes people forget about what could happen. But we have plenty of time in the offseason to talk about drafts and stuff like that. Let's talk about that Chiefs Dolphins game. Very cold, very blistery out there. And it definitely could tell that the Dolphins had no interest in being in that cold of an environment. Wasn't the best game, sloppy on both sides, lots of drops by Travis Kelce. Shout out to Kyle Juszczyk's wife for making Taylor Swift's coat. That's always fun. But
did you see Kyle Juszczyk on social media in his bye week, literally just putting, my wife made that every single time he saw a picture, just dropping that in the comments below it. Like, he was going to bat.
And I don't know why I saw this, but she gained more followers on Instagram from that in a weekend's time than any NFL player all season. I don't know how someone knows that, why I saw that, why we're caring about how many followers someone gets, but shout out to Kyle for doing that. But this game specifically, once I saw it was cold, I didn't think the Dolphins had a real chance.
Yep.
That team is built to play in warm indoor conditions. And I think it played out. And they were super banged up. They had lost 4 defensive edge rushers in the last couple weeks. And if you're not going to be able to get pressure on Patrick Mahomes, you're not going to be able to knock him out. So as much as a lot of people don't want to see the Chiefs continue through the playoffs, it didn't seem like the Dolphins had a legitimate shot.
The Dolphins have been falling apart over the last few weeks. And I don't want to blame all of that on the weather, but the NFL tends to change once you get to the point in the season when everyone starts to get a little banged up, the point in the season when the weather gets colder and you have to change some things when you're playing in a colder environment. And their injuries to the edge rushers, I think, was a big thing that was kind of overlooked for the most part, but I heard a couple people mentioning it going into the week, you being one of them. But I don't think the Dolphins are going to make many major changes going into the offseason, but I question that they can ever make a run with this team, with this style, unless they get good enough to get a 1 seed, be able to play at home the entire playoffs. And then obviously you get the warm weather game or dome game for the Super Bowl. Like, I feel like they need a very idealistic situation for them to be able to make a run with their silent team. And I don't know if that's going to happen with all of the major competition in the AFC.
Yeah, especially when the teams of right now all play outside. Baltimore, Cincinnati, I've said
Buffalo.
Cincinnati, Buffalo, Kansas City.
But Cincinnati
Like,
typically, like, they're probably going to be back in the mix next year.
right.
Exactly.
So I get what you're saying too. And I think we talk about this too, like in terms of, the NFL is so unique because most of the time the Super Bowl champion isn't the best team from the season. It is the team that gets the hottest at that moment. And I remember on this podcast, me and you were having a conversation probably about midseason going, have the Dolphins peak too early? And because they got out to a super fast start, and it was like, can they continue this all the way through the season? And I think you saw they hit their peak, injury started, they started their decline, and they haven't been able to start the trek back up the mountain. And unfortunately, the Dolphins didn't move on. But I think you're right. I think they're going to be a competitive team for a while. Maybe it's just a couple bigger pieces on defense, or maybe it is that idealistic. We need the 1 seed for the Dolphins to make the playoffs or make the Super Bowl, not the playoffs. They already know how to make the playoffs.
Oh, they know how to make the playoffs. All right. They probably should have won that division too, but that was part of the decline, and Buffalo potentially peaking at the right time. We'll talk about that. But Kansas City moving on, they're the team that you're kind of keeping an eye on because they didn't look great all year. They had plenty of holes. They still have plenty of holes. Did they just win a playoff game because they played in super cold weather against a team that couldn't do it? Or is Mahomes going to start peaking at the right time and the offense of the Chiefs is going to start figuring it out right when people don't want them to?
People need to stop sleeping on this Chiefs defense.
That's the big
This
one, yeah.
Their defense can win them a Super Bowl. Mahomes, Andy Reid, Travis Kelce, they're experienced enough and they're good enough that on a crucial third down, they can get a first down. This defense will keep them in every game. Even this week against Buffalo. This isn't going to, even though it's in Buffalo and the weather is going to be wild again this weekend, you can count them out. And it might, I'm not saying it's going to come down to a 13-second, stop them from kicking a field goal, plan for overtime kind of thing. Buffalo might win by, 7, maybe even 10 at the end of it. But this defense is legit. They got playmakers all over the place. This is not the City Chiefs that we saw just last year, a couple years ago against Tampa Bay, that first Super Bowl against San Francisco. This is a defensive first team.
It is, and no one wants to think that because you think the names. And I mean, the NFL is a the names kind of entity. It's just how they run as an organization, and that's why they have so much success in the public eye. But when it comes to the term defense wins championships, like the Chiefs are potentially that team that defines that this year. And it's not pretty, it's not flashy, it's not what people want to see. But I'm worried that as somebody who doesn't want to see the Chiefs get there again, someone who wants parity in the league, like you might still see it again. They're far from out of this.
100%. And that's probably, and we're going to talk more about that team coming up. So let's run through these last couple of recaps here. Green Bay, wow. Wow.
Is it Dallas wow or Green Bay wow or both?
No, it is Green Bay wow. And dude, I'm in love with love, man. I did what's his name? The one guy from PFF, I forget his name. He said Jordan Love did the Josh Allen arc in one season where he looked bad, then he had a lot of turnovers, and then all of a sudden put it together. And it could just be a hot streak, right? Like I'm 100% on that. But the fact that the possibility that we have a legit quarterback, top 10 potential quarterback again, is so exciting for this team. And like I said at the top, like expectations for this team were like so far out there. Like this was a great win. I loved every minute of it, especially because it was against Dallas. Like America's team does not count. Everyone loves to see Dallas get destroyed. And for that to happen, for the Packers to play so good, just the young team, the vibes around the team, incredible. I could go on forever, but that's all my Packers talk. But Dallas did do the right thing by retaining Mike McCarthy. I know we're going to talk coaches in a sec, but
yeah, I mean, I I don't know for sure about that part. We'll talk about coaches in a second, though. The Cowboys in general, are they cursed or like I can't figure out exactly what is wrong because they almost seem like the team that should have the winning formula that has the right guys around. But like now you question have the Cowboys teams of the last 5 years that have had so much success, especially the last 3 years, where I believe they're on 3 straight seasons of 12 wins or 11 wins. Like, is it really just beating up on bad teams? Is it really stat padding and garbage time that has Dak Prescott looking like he should be in the MVP conversation? Like, we try to hammer home all the time the Cowboys only beat one winning team this year. I guess it was technically two when you add in that Lions game that was really close at the end and the whole controversy. But maybe there's something to it because I feel like there's this argument every single year around the Cowboys, and everyone's like, "Ah, nah, it's just a hate on the Cowboys." But when they keep consistently going into the playoffs, when you're forced to play good competition, even in this case, when you're playing the 7 seed, a 7 seed has never won an NFL playoff game since they made the playoffs teams, 7 deep on each side, and they still lose. Like, what is wrong?
So, one, the Cowboys defense is elite for fantasy because they're so aggressive, they get turnovers. But because of that, when they're not getting picks, they're giving up yards. That's the same thing for Trevon Diggs. And that's the same thing that happened to Deron Bland this past week. He didn't get an interception. He gave up over 150 yards, passing yards. They're an aggressive bunch, and teams can find ways to take advantage of it. And that they're also not a complete defense. They have quick linebackers, but they're like 200-pound linebackers. And teams have figured out, oh, wait, we can just run on this team. It'll slow the game down, and we can run on this team. And that's what Green Bay did. Did some turnovers help? Yes, the pick six before the half up. But to your point about Dak Prescott, uh, Green Bay pulled its starters and had to put him back in because he went out there and started balling.
Mhm.
Like, and he was balling before they pulled their starters. They just thought, with 6 minutes left, we don't have to do this anymore. We're probably going to play in a short week. Let's pull our guys now. They end up putting some of those guys back in. Dak Prescott is playing lights out, and he played his best. I will stand by. He played his best football of the season. And if he won MVP, it wouldn't be he would be the one that benefits from MVP ending at the end of the season and not counting for playoffs. Where,
100%.
like I've said, for me, it's Dak Prescott and Josh Allen. They're 1A, 1B for me. Josh Allen would get the bump for the playoffs if it counted, which probably should count for the playoffs, but we don't need to have that conversation. But Dak Prescott had an incredible year, and the growth he made with Mike McCarthy is why I was so strong on that. You should have kept Mike McCarthy, which the Cowboys did.
So you seem to be in the mindset of the defense is the problem and or the personnel. So like the personnel meaning like they haven't found the right defensive tackles to be able to stuff the inside on the run. They haven't found the right linebackers that can stuff the run as opposed to like it seems like they're really good coverage linebackers.
So
Your scheme is very aggressive to the fact that like you're opportunistic. Like they look like a good defense because they're not giving up a lot of points most of the time because they're feeding on turnovers on teams that aren't as high class. But when you have a team who protects the ball, the cracks start to show.
exactly. Their problem is, so you know how some defenses, they're the bend don't break. We're going to give up the 12-play yard. You're eventually going to make a mistake, and either that's going to be a holding penalty or a sack, and you have to kick a field goal or punt. But we're not going to let you in the end zone.
Yep.
And those defenses are great until you find an offense that you can't stop getting in the end zone. Same thing with Dallas. They have a really good, like their defense is good. They're aggressive. They go for those turnovers. They were 12-2 in games that they had a turnover or more, I believe, where they created. But if they weren't creating turnovers, they didn't succeed. They didn't get a turnover this past week. That, not saying that's what cost them completely. Like I think there was some. I said it in last week's show too. That game had they came in with the most pressure of anybody in the NFL. The
Mhm.
Packers were playing with house money. They were the hot team. The Cowboys, I said if they get over the hump, I think they'll make the Super Bowl. They didn't do that. And I
Mhm.
think that they'll be right back in the situation next year, seeing a 6 or 7 seed, maybe the 4 seed because the NFC doesn't like to have repeat champions. And they'll make the playoffs next year, and we'll be right back here talking about it. They might get a win in the wild card, and then they'll go to the divisional and they'll have a big moment. And I think that's just kind of what we're seeing with Dallas. They have to figure out how to get over that mental hurdle in their. They have the playoff yips. They got to get over the yips.
And even it seems like just a win alone, it hasn't gotten them over the yips, because they have gotten a playoff win a couple of times in the last 5 years, I want to say, but they haven't gotten past the divisional round in either of those years. So we'll see how that continues. We move on to, I believe, then Monday, the reschedule game with the Bills.
Oh, you forgot the night game.
Oh, you're right. Actually, the best game of the weekend. My bad. Stafford and Goff, Rams and Lions. And the Lions edging out the Rams, who were making a great comeback at the end. That Lions defense did a great job of holding on.
Literally did a great job of holding, is what I meant to say.
Yeah, that's true too.
That it was the best game, but it was also the game that the refs had the most impact in. There was
Which, I mean, you can argue that maybe the refs had an impact in every game, but when it's not as close, you don't see it.
And in that game, there was calls for both ways. That was like, how is that not a penalty? How is that not a penalty? And in that game was happy for the Lions, happy for that moment for Jared Goff. Didn't understand the booing pregame of Matt Stafford, like he's never done anything for that community. That was the only reason I didn't care if the Lions won, but when they started booing Matt during the game, I wouldn't have a problem with it. Pre-game, the dude comes back for the first time. He meant so much to that organization. I know he never won a championship for them, but he spent 12 years there. He did a lot in the community. He did a lot for that organization, and he was one of the toughest quarterbacks we'll ever see. Like, the dude threw a touchdown pass, 2-point conversion with his shoulder hanging against the Cleveland Browns. But because he's now back, they're going to boo in their first playoff win while they hung a banner for their NFC championship. Like, who hangs banners for divisional championships? Like, that is so crazy to me. But this
Lions
game
don't have a lot.
I know, it was their first one since 1995. It was actually the first ever since the NFC North was no longer the NFC Central. So shout out to the Lions for getting the win. Big moment for them. And honestly, congrats. We have the Monday games to talk about, so we can get to those quick, because people are like, move on from last week. You're already 20 minutes in, and I understand. But there was a lot of exciting stuff to happen. But they get the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and that seems like an easy win for the NFC Championship Detroit Lions.
NFC Championship game, we will see. So now we're moving on to Monday, the rescheduled game between the Bills and the Steelers. And I think this was expected to be closer because the weather was not going to be good. Once we heard that they moved it because of the weather, it was going to be more idealistic conditions despite all the snow in the stands. The Bills came out and took care of business. The Steelers hung in for a while, had a decent first half, but I think it all went exactly how we expected it to go. Did you hear that this also was partially not assigned seating in the stadium for this game? The first time in the modern era that's ever happened.
Yeah. Did you see the seats?
They were sitting on snow mounds. Yeah.
Right. And that's cool. That's great. I mean, this game, I'm going to be honest with you, it was background noise for me. Like, I never had any doubt that the Bills were going to win this game. I know the Steelers made it close at some points, closer than people probably thought. Vegas was super happy that it hit the over and the big over.
All the people that took the under at the lower score.
Yeah.
But yeah, basically just got screwed over when they moved it for the weather.
So congrats to the Bills. Should be a fun rematch with the Chiefs. That's all I got on that game.
Yeah, I mean, that's basically all for that. That was the least exciting of the group. Not that it was even there was a lot of close games even, but Eagles Buccaneers, there was actually one moment in this game where I thought the Eagles had a chance, and then they got stopped on the tush push when Jalen Hurts almost got his helmet ripped off on a 2-point conversion. And at that point, I knew it was over. That's basically where the game ended for me.
I think Jalen Hurts is still running from pressure. So
he's been running from pressure since week 12, 13, something like that.
Congrats to the Bucs.
Yeah.
I mean,
they're not a flashy team. I don't know if they're going to get much further. I don't think they're going to.
They're the
But
first. I forget. I don't know the year stat, but I saw they are one of like a few teams to make the divisional round with a bottom 10 offense and a bottom 10 defense.
that's actually really impressive and seems wrong. But I'm
I mean, they've
guessing
been
it's
playing.
yardage, not points. But even yet, I guess we just get lucky sometimes. They
I
were
think
a
it's
9
total
and 8
offense, total
team.
defense. Like they just played in the NFC South. They've gotten hot the last couple weeks. I mean, they went into the game 5-6 wins. Eagles came in
Yep,
5-6 losses. And if, like we talked about, if you're playing your best football right now, it doesn't matter what your record is.
it's
Like as
true.
much as we think this could be an easy win for Detroit, there's no guarantees in this league.
100%. Which is why now we're sitting here with the Buccaneers in the next round. Um, Do you want to start with the retained coaches? I know we talked a little bit about the Mike McCarthy situation. The Eagles also seemingly are retaining Nick Sirianni. I know you and I talked
It,
last week about if any playoff teams are going to get rid of coaches. It seems like no.
so it seems like Nick Sirianni is good to go, but it does sound like he hasn't actually officially had that meeting with Jeffrey Lurie yet.
Yeah,
So maybe some Friday news. This news loves to drop as soon as we're done recording, so would not be surprised. And don't forget that when Doug Peterson got fired, they went into that meeting not thinking we're going to fire Doug Peterson, and then when he said, "Hey, this is how I want to move forward," they're like, "Yeah, this ain't it," and they moved on. So I know uh, Howie Roseman and Nick Sirianni have been talking about different coordinators, reaching out to some people that might be available, and so on and so on. So that sounds like it's a good situation for Nick to come back, but ultimately the owner will have a definite say. And a team that was on the brink of a Super Bowl to start 10-1, not make it out of the wild card weekend, not win 12 games, would not. I don't think it's smart, but would not be surprised.
they're also in an interesting situation because you got to think they're going to wipe the defensive staff clean, especially after the coordinator, not official coordinator change, but play caller change in the middle of the year and everything else. But part of you has to think that they're going to try to hold on to their offensive coordinator for a bit because he's getting head coaching interviews and you have a chance to get a comp pick. And I mean, I don't know if that's a reason to try to like start a coordinator search late, but I mean, hearing that he's getting head coaching interviews makes me think like, what the heck's going on that he is a top candidate?
Well, remember, statistics for one season are not everything. I have this
That Matt
conversation with Tyler
LaFleur.
all the time. Matt LaFleur had the 27th or 28th ranked offense his year in Tennessee. Now he played with a quarterback that couldn't have feeling in his arm for half the season in Blaine Gabbert. So, and look at him now. Like Ben Johnson is a name that's been around and has he got some buzz last year before he became the official offensive coordinator. He's gotten some buzz for other offensive coordinator positions. So he's a name that's been quote unquote around. Not saying he gets a job this year, could be another filler out here, but would be interesting. I think he stays if he doesn't get a head coaching job. But it's, do you bring in a different quarterbacks coach? Do you bring in an assistant head coach that's on the offensive side of the ball that could help a little bit? Because honestly, maybe you know this as an Eagle fan. What is Nick Sirianni's background?
He came from under Frank Reich, and then before that, he was on the Chargers original staff with Herbert.
So offense.
Offense.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. So I wouldn't be surprised if they want to get a new voice in there. Keep Johnson as OC, or maybe move him to associate head coach or some title
Mhm.
increase, and then bring in another offensive play caller. Maybe he doesn't want to lose play calling abilities and he'll just mutually agree to part ways and go somewhere else. Definitely interesting to watch. And this last 5-minute conversation will probably be pointless by the time it airs because that seems how it goes here at Couch GMs podcast.
100%. But a conversation that we don't think is going to be pointless because there's been so many people talking about it in the media is the Cowboys sticking with Mike McCarthy. I think after the blowout loss, there was a lot of question marks if he was actually going to get fired, even though it was a lot more people on the bandwagon of him staying beforehand. But Jerry Jones has officially come out and given the loss was on all of us, from the players to the coaches to the front office. It wasn't just on McCarthy. And Mike McCarthy says, I like the direction this team's going in, despite having 12 wins in the last, in the regular season each of the last 3 years and only winning one playoff game, I believe it was. Like, there's a lot of question marks, like we said, for the Cowboys. And if what you were saying is true with the defensive scheme maybe not being quite right, if it's personnel, I don't think they're getting anywhere, because Jerry Jones is a person that likes to stick with it and roll. But if it's a coaching thing, they might get bailed out by the fact that Dan Quinn is likely getting a head coaching job again. It's what it seems like with all the interviews he's getting, and he's their defensive coordinator.
Yeah, and I do think personnel is part of the problem when it comes to like you have really fast players, but you don't have the big players to
This sounds like a Dolphins situation, by the way.
really get into the trenches, and I think that's a good comparison. The one thing too, I don't think people are thinking about. So there's been a lot of talk about the Dak Prescott extension this offseason. Could he get $60 million after the season he had? Well, he'll be a UFA in 2025. Now they would still have the franchise tag. But by keeping Mike McCarthy, he has 1 year left on his deal as well. Meaning if they don't re-sign him, they could let this team go 1 more year and then essentially get out of Dak and Mike McCarthy and start fresh with something new if they don't like how this season is going to go.
I also believe CeeDee Lamb is up for a contract extension as well. So I'm interested to see if, like, he might be the one you re-sign regardless, but they let the other two ride. But yeah, that's actually a really good point, that they could not re-sign him, even though it seems like the trend is the quarterback that deserves it gets re-signed before his last season is, played out, as opposed to after.
Yeah, and we'll see, because CeeDee Lamb will be playing 2024 on his 5th-year option. Uh, so
So again, a lot of times they get signed before that, but he doesn't have to.
Exactly. So Dallas could be doing like a last two raw, and then they're going to blow it up. So that'd be interesting to see. Or maybe that's the new news. Maybe Dak Prescott signs his new contract by the time we're done recording this, before it gets posted, and we can go on from there. But Gerard Mayo got the head coaching job in New England to replace Bill Belichick very quickly. A little surprising, because I feel like everybody thought it was going to be Vrabel. But I know Mayo has a lot of good reputation, and I think it was good to make this move quickly, so you didn't have, let the build up and the hope for people to get Vrabel and all the talking heads on TV to be talking about that, and just be like, no, this is our guy, and we're going to move forward. And Bill might, when they had that meeting with Kraft, Bill might have said, I think Mayo's ready, and kind of help lead that and help usher in his next guy. And I think that's a good fit for them. But it sounds like Bill Belichick, from everything we're seeing and reading and hearing, is leaning towards Atlanta, which I can't say I would be surprised by. But I mean, heck, that would have to tank Bijan Robinson's, because they never had a solid running back in New
Well, they
England.
didn't already this year. Like, it was him and Algier on the split. Keep Cordarrelle Patterson in the mix, sure. Like, nothing's going to change, in my opinion. Like, I don't think it really hurts his value. It's just his value is going to be the same as it was this year. It just wasn't as good as we, had it pegged to be this year.
And a lot of people think the offensive coordinator is going to be Josh McDaniels. They're going to reunite with Bill Belichick, and that is not what
they're just going to run it back in the South so they can get closer to their retirement home when they do retire, right?
Exactly.
Oh my God. And they'll bring Vrabel in for the defense, probably. Just watch it happen.
But cool. So fun fact, I didn't make a bumper, so I need you to mouth the music for the transition into the divisional playoff preview. Go for it.
Burner. I don't know what comes after that. It's close enough.
Sounds good. All right, we're back for the playoff divisional round preview. We've hinted at some of these matchups real quick. I'll just read off the matchups. 4 games, 2 on Saturday, 2 on Sunday. First game is Texans Ravens. Second game is Packers 49ers. So both 1 seeds playing on Saturday. Buccaneers at Lions, and then we end with Chiefs Bills. And once again, I think the schedule makers hit a home run at slotting these games in. George, of those four, what are you most looking forward to, or which one you want to talk about first?
I think we should just go in order. I'll be sitting in 20-degree weather in Baltimore on Saturday with my fiance, who is the Ravens fan. So that's going to be fun to see CJ Stroud and if he can conquer this Ravens defense that has been suffocating all year. I think
Are you
this is
going to
one
wear
of
a
those
Ravens jersey? I'm putting you on blast.
TBD.
Okay. He's a Chargers Eagles fan, and now he's going to show up to a Ravens game in a Ravens jersey.
I almost wore the It's Complicated shirt again, but it's literally in the dryer that you probably heard go off about 5 minutes ago. So couldn't have happened. But anyway, this is the first game. The two games on Saturday are the 1 seeds, and this is going to be the games where it's like, is the rest going to hurt those teams? Important notes for the Ravens. It'll be the first game with Dalvin Cook. He got elevated to their active roster, and Mark Andrews is listed as questionable. He's expected to be activated from injured reserve to come back. So the Ravens basically playing at full strength.
Yeah, I think this should be a fun game. The big thing for me is, will the starters being rested have an impact? Will CJ Stroud continue the hot streak he was on, especially last week? How will this team ball out? Will something catch up to him? And will so like the Ravens, I think, are in a very similar situation to Cowboys, right? This team is all about sacks, right? Laramie Tunsil locked down Myles Garrett. It's one of the big things that nobody's talking about. And this offensive line, now it's not one guy per se in Baltimore, but if they don't get their sacks, does this make the game favor the Texans?
It does, but I don't think it does as much as it did last week. Number one, it's interesting to note that I believe the Ravens sack leader is a defensive tackle, which is not typical in the NFL. Justin Matabike.
That's what I said, not Bouquet.
Yep. And they are really stifling against the run as well, having Roquan Smith and Patrick Queen. So their idea would be, even if they can't get home to the quarterback, you're trying to make the team one-dimensional. Maybe you can drop an extra man back in coverage and defend better that way, even without getting to the quarterback. So they've been good majority of the season. They've had a couple of games where it's like head scratcher. They had one bad game against the Browns. They had the Rams game that went to overtime in the 30s, but like, they are also a top 3 defense that we'll see if the Texans can overcome that like they did the Browns.
All right, take your pick. Who wins?
I go Ravens in a close one. I don't know what the betting line is, but I feel like I heard it somewhere around 6 or 7. I might take the Texans in the points, but the Ravens money line.
I'll tell you what it is as of recording this. I want the Texans to win, right? Give me a Texans Packers Super Bowl, Jordan Love versus CJ Stroud. Like, that's what I want.
That'd be something.
Okay? That would be incredible. Like, just for a second here, if we get all the games, right? If we got a Packers, Buccaneers, NFC Championship, and the Texans, and pick whichever one, AFC Championship. Like, how many people would have had that as their Final Four? It'd be so wild. Don't think that's
That'd be
realistic.
There'd be one bracket that's right, and it's that one person who goes into the Elite 8 in the NCAA tournament bracket, and they're like, I got the one left, but you're not going to get it right.
So it's 9.5.
9.5. Yeah, I definitely would take Texans on the points, but I'm still going to say Ravens win.
All right. Same for the second game on Saturday. 9.5 points, 49ers over the Packers.
I wanted to do the same exact thing here, but the big question again is just going to be, are the 49ers going to come out slow after resting their guys for almost 3 weeks? And the Packers are just as hot as the Texans are. This is literally a carbon copy game. Just insert 2 different teams, but the underdog's the hot young team, and the favorite is the more veteran team that's coming off of rest. And it's super hard to predict games like that because we've seen so many letdowns. I remember a year that you and Tyler had the Packers and the Titans as 1 seeds coming in, and they both lost in the same week, and no one expected that. This is also the flip game for the Packers as well. Like, you talked about how dominant they've been against the Cowboys. They have been brutal against the 49ers.
So in Aaron Rodgers' career, they faced 4 times in the playoffs. They're 0-4. They're 4-1 in their last 5 playoff games. I believe 2002 was the last time the Packers beat the 49ers in the playoffs. So definitely need to exercise some demons right here. So interesting enough, right? So the 3 teams left in the NFC is the Lions, who eliminated the Packers from the playoffs last year by beating them in week 18. It is the 49ers, who eliminated them in the 2021 playoffs. That game we're talking about being the number 1 seed. Or no, that wasn't the – was that the number 1 seed? No. Yes, it was.
Yeah, I think that was the number 1 seed. Yep.
And 2020 was the Buccaneers, who Tampa Bay beat in the championship as the 1 seed at home. So the NFC is the Packers, and the last 3 teams to eliminate them from the playoffs. That's your
if they can
kind of
exercise
oddball fact.
demons, I'm just saying, if they can exercise demons and the Lions get through, they're going to win.
I'm just telling you right now. Again, if I would be so ecstatic, but it is so crazy how 2 years ago I was worried about like how much stress I had as just a fan going up against the 49ers, and how much like, let's just see what happens. Matt LaFleur, before the game, told the sideline reporter, he said, "No one expects us to win, so we're just going to throw haymakers." And I love that mentality, and I hope that continues this week against the 49ers. I picked the Cowboys on the show. I ended up picking the Packers 2 days later for Cheesehead TV. Got that one right. I think I'm going to pick the 49ers in this one, and that for Cheesehead TV. We'll see. I might change again because I'm so all over the place with this team. But it'll be a fun one no matter what. And I like the points as well.
I have to stick with my guns that I think the 49ers are the best team in the league going into the playoffs. They're still the most complete team now. I have to stick with the 49ers, but I'm going to do the same thing I did in the other one. I would take the Packers in the points, but take the 49ers to win.
All right. Then we got Lions, Buccaneers, only 6.5 points. So not a lot of close games so far, as the Buccaneers go to Detroit. And we kind of hint about this a lot. Like, this seems like a lock for Detroit. Like, if they just show up and play their brand of football, they should win. However, if Tampa Bay can get after Jared Goff like they got off Jalen Hurts, he'll throw you some picks. He'll cause some turnovers. If their defense can tackle as well as they did against everybody in Philadelphia, they can make some noise. If Baker Mayfield continues to play like he has been, they can make some noise. So I'm not going to rule out the Buccaneers pulling off the upset, but I ain't picking it. Taking the Lions, and I'm taking the points.
I'm taking the under, and I'm taking the Lions no matter what, because
49.5.
I'm taking the under. I would take the under at 39.5, because I think that the Buccaneers are going to get to Goff, and that's going to, keep the scoring down. And I have seen nothing over the past few games of watching Buccaneers highlights, watching the 3 quarters of the Eagles-Buccaneers game I did, that tell me that the Buccaneers have anything on offense. They were horrible in the first half. They dropped so many passes. They were a mess. They actually gave up sacks to an Eagles team that hasn't gotten sacks in 5 weeks. And they still obviously dominated because their defense was stifling on the blitz and whatever. But they did not impress me. And because some people are going to look at that game last week and be like, the Buccaneers did pretty good. But when you look at it in the form of drop passes and how bad the Eagles have been in coverage the last few weeks, and just seeing like they just let the Giants do that, the Buccaneers doing it, looking with the same exact mistakes, wasn't impressive to me. So I think the Buccaneers look better than they were last week. They probably should have won that game with a 50 burger if they didn't drop all those passes and miss those opportunities on offense. So I'm taking the Lions. I'm taking the under, but the Lions are pretty much a lock for me.
Do you So the one thing I would say that scares me about the Lions, just playing devil's advocate real quick, is last week was so emotional for that team, for that city. Could there be a little bit of a dip? Could there? I'm not saying there's going to be. I don't know if Dan Campbell will allow his team to have a dip, but that was the one thing I thought was like that. Them beating the Rams felt like the game of the year for them. And there's obviously multiple games left, depending on how well you continue to do. I think the Buccaneers as a team you can start slow on and come and realize, all right, guys, let's get our stuff together, go out and win this game. Might be sloppy, so I do like you calling the under in that one, but and I'm going to take the Lions. I think it's a pretty close one. I'm looking for ways to pick the Buccaneers, and that's probably wouldn't get you in trouble in the NFL.
That's true, but it still should be a good game. But it's going to be sloppy. I think this being the sloppiest playoff game on both sides combined is probably where I would put this. But we have one more game. And for all of you who like a good bedtime on the East Coast, it's nice that they made the Sunday playoff game at 6:30 instead of the typical 8 o'clock window. Kansas City Chiefs at Buffalo Bills. The rivalry renews as these guys have faced off with each other multiple times in the last few years in the playoffs. And it's going to be a nice, cozy -2 real feel at kickoff instead of the -20 something that they were dealing with in Kansas City last week. So, number one, we know weather's not going to affect either of these teams. They're both used to playing in the bitter cold, but it's actually going to be warmer despite it still being in the negatives. It feel like temperature in Buffalo on Sunday night.
Yeah, so hopefully no broken helmets. And if they do break, get the player out of the game. Let's not relive that.
The fact that took 2 or 3 plays is absolutely ridiculous.
We said again, if you just join for some reason, clicked halfway through the show, we were all watching the game together, and I was like, okay, I can understand one play nobody noticed, but by that time the TV had shown it 500 times. The independent spotter had to have seen it. The delay of the TVs in the booth, someone had to see it. How do we get to 3 plays? That whole controversy is should they have taken a timeout? Whatever. That doesn't matter. This game, super excited for this one. I think it's going to be a good game. And I won't spoil. I'm not going to make you wait. I do think the Buffalo Bills finally exercise their game as against the Chiefs here. I think they're going to get the win. Now, like I said, this defense is very good for the Chiefs. I don't think it'll be a score fest crazy. I think it'll be cold. It'll be tough. And where I think if the Chiefs can play good defense and get Isaiah Pacheco going and just let Mahomes and Kelsey and Rashee Rice, hit a play here and there, the Chiefs can still win this game. I'm definitely not ruling out. That's why this game is only a 2.5 point favorite. Which kind of means that they think the Chiefs are going to win because you normally get 3 points for playing at home. This one should be fun, and I'm super excited to be ending divisional round weekend with this matchup.
We always say these games, these are the culmination of these juggernaut teams that keep going against each other. We're probably going to get another one next year when the Bengals are back in the mix and whatever that is. But I'm also going to go with the Bills. The biggest thing that concerns me with the Bills is if they do fall behind. I like the Bills a lot more playing ahead in this game. And it goes back to Josh Allen and his turnover problems. If Josh Allen has to play hero ball, he normally plays a lot looser and he throws a lot more interceptions, fumbles the ball. Turnovers is the only thing that's going to stop this Bills team at this point. And the Chiefs defense is opportunistic enough to get those. But I think if they play ahead, even if they don't really have much of a chance to establish the run game, like last week, they were mediocre in the run game, they still can pull out this game. But I have a feeling the Bills can get ahead and they're going to be okay. And my fun fact of the day is a meme I saw on social media that Josh Allen is undefeated since his commercial with Peppa Pig for Paramount Plus. So the power of Peppa Pig.
Let me ask you something.
Yeah.
Is Peppa Pig pink or purple?
Pink.
Okay, so
it's a pig.
I know, but it looks a little purple. And I was just going to make a joke that maybe the Bills are the purple in the Super Bowl logo. It wasn't that uncomplicated, man. I was just trying to blow your mind. And
I thought you were trying to go what color's the dress on me here?
No. Some people might say purple because it's not like that super bright hot pink, But we're talking too much Peppa Pig here. This game should be good. And I think I really like what you mentioned. Josh Allen is a big factor because of his turnovers. And again, it's going to come down to pressure on the Patrick Mahomes from the other side. And last week, Ed Oliver really got after Mason Rudolph. The Chiefs have probably the best interior center guard in all of football of those 3 positions combined. Can Von Miller, their big acquisition, be the guy on the edge?
Or is he going to be a healthy scratch again?
He's not gonna be scratched. He played last week. He'll be okay.
No, I know, but like the fact that anyone that knows the name and doesn't realize that like he's been struggling, he was actually a healthy scratch at least once at the end of the year. It's been not great.
That probably had a lot more to do with off the field than on the field, so we don't need to go down that rabbit hole.
Performance hasn't been there either. He's been disappointing.
He's also coming off of an ACL injury.
Yeah, and sometimes that takes a full year. So like maybe next year you see the comeback of Von Miller, but like hopefully they have other places that they can rely on, because relying on if the turning point in this is a big Von Miller game, I don't know if you're going to get that.
Yeah, we'll have to wait and see. You wanna wrap this up with some DFS face off?
Let's do it.
Final pick.
Wait,
Buffalo.
What? Oh,
you said
Buffalo.
Buffalo. And I'm gonna say Buffalo as well. So I have Buffalo, Baltimore, San Francisco, Detroit. I'm chalk this week. Are you chalk?
I am chalk as well. So I'm trying to figure out where it's going to go wrong, and that Kansas City game could be it. But
all right, one last thing. Let's get it.
we're going to have a little bit of fun trying to figure out exactly the numbers on Tyler's guys, as he did send us his lineup this week. So I can help you with that if you want to announce his players, and I'll help with that part. But
right.
we are setting up a DFS lineup. Make sure you check the link in our description and our social media posts to join that before spaces run out. So make sure you get there as quick as you can. But 3 of us put together a DFS lineup again for this week. I was the winner last week, and I believe it was Tyler second and Cody in third. So a complete flip of what happened.
I won week 18.
Complete flip of what happened week 18. I was last in week 18. So if you think of it that way, we're all knotted up.
It's Tyler. He doesn't have anything.
If you average it out to points, like 3 points for first place.
He's
like
0-0. I'm 1-1. You're 1-1. He's in last.
Okay.
Maybe he's in first. I don't know how the math works.
We're tied, but if you just don't want to listen to my story. Okay. How do you want us? Do you want me to start again like we usually do here?
Sure.
All right. So traditional lineup: quarterback, 2 running back, 3 wide receiver, tight end, flex, defense. I started off with a quarterback that won me it last week. Going to that Detroit Tampa Bay game, I stuck with Jared Goff at 6,300.
That's the same for me as well with Jared Goff. So I'm going to spend time on that. And then Tyler took Brock Purdy, 6,500.
You're on it. There we go. So all pretty much at the same middle tier kind of quarterback. Running back, I stuck with the Lions stack, and I went with Jahmyr Gibbs at 6,600.
All right. And then both Tyler and we paid up. We paid the 8,800 for CMC.
I tried to find a way to do it, but with my lineup, I went more balanced. So couldn't quite do that. He's like $2,000 more than the second running back in budget. It's absolutely insane.
Yeah. I mean, I think I like my lineup, how it turned out, but we'll be the judge of that.
We'll see. I went hot hand on RB2 and spent 5,700 on Devin Singletary. Singletary has scored more than 10 all but 1 week since week 14. So see if that works out.
All right. And I went cheaper on my second running back. I went with Justice Hill at 4,800. Because who knows who scores the touchdowns in Baltimore. So
Dalvin Cook probably. Just watch it happen.
And then Tyler, he went big at running back. Isaiah Pacheco, 6,400 on top of the CMC. So
I'm intrigued where he's going to save the money later.
Yeah, I think
he was also the most expensive quarterback. I mean, by 200, but wide receiver. My wide receiver 1 is also in Houston. I went Nico Collins. Nico Collins has been absolutely insane lately.
I went with my
7,100.
I went with my wide receiver. I got a stack with my quarterback. I got me Amon-Ra St. Brown, 8,200.
So you paid up at the wide receiver position there as well.
And then Tyler's top wide receiver would be Brandon Ayuk, which would be 69. Nice, 100 points.
Nice.
Dollars.
And then I must be expecting a lot of points in that Houston-Baltimore game. My third straight person from that game is $6,000 for Zay Flowers.
Not bad, not bad. I went to the Buffalo Kansas City game and I got Rashee Rice for $6,800. And then Tyler's second guy is Mr. 6 catches, 156 yards and a tud. Last week, Romeo Dobbs, $5,600.
He was the one that kind of emerged from the group. We all had a Packers wide receiver last week, and I think we all picked wrong, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, he had Wicks. I had Reed.
And I had Melton.
Maybe you had Melton.
I had Melton. We all picked wrong. There's 5 of them, and we picked 3 of them and still got it wrong. So we just like more chances for one of us hitting, but we'll see if that continues for there. And then my budget pick, $3,600 at the wide receiver position. The stack with my quarterback, Jameson Williams.
All right, I don't mind that one at all. I had to do a budget at this spot as well. For $3,800, I went Khalil Shakur.
Buffalo wide receiver. Popping up a little bit. And I don't hate that.
He's kind of becoming the number 2 over Gabe Davis. Like, I feel better about him than Gabe Davis. Although Gabe Davis did have 4 touchdowns against these teams once before. And then Tyler
Gabe Davis has been absolutely disappearing at times this year, though. So,
and then Tyler, he went with Josh Reynolds, for $3,700. So we all had to go budget with the third wide receiver, which is pretty common if you get a top guy somewhere else.
Tight end position, I went near the top, $5,000 as long as he comes off of IR, Mark Andrews.
All right. So I wanted to go Mark Andrews, but I didn't think he would actually come off IR.
Full participant the last 2 days, by the way.
Okay. I still didn't think he would come off IR. I think they're going to hold him out for one more week. Could be wrong because it is playoffs, so I get that. But I don't think he's going to have a big impact if he does play. I think it'll be more of just getting his feet wet. So I decided to save some money and went with Luke Musgrave at tight end for a $3,600. And Tyler, he went at tight end. He went Cade Otton for $3,500.
He hit Cade Otton last week too. I don't know. I don't think he did much of anything, but
he had about 4 drops.
So did everybody else on that team.
Yeah, it was mainly Cade Otton that had all the drops, though.
And Mike Evans. Mike Evans dropped a touchdown and like 1 or 2 other 20-yard catches.
Yeah. He had 2 drops, that touchdown and a 20-yard pass. The rest were Cade Otton.
Okay. Anyway, and then flex position, I spent up here as well with a little bit of extra money left. I went somewhere that Cody hopes is going to work out. Aaron Jones, $6,700. That's a bold one against San Francisco, but Green Bay is going to try to get the run established again.
Yeah, so I went for my flex. I didn't have as much money. I spent $4,200, and I took the flyer on big play Christian Watson.
I thought about him as a budget if I could have fit it, but I couldn't quite do it. So that's not a bad pick.
And then Tyler, after taking Cade Otton, flexes a tight end, George Kittle, $5,200.
So he could have just flexed that instead, but he could have flipped it. It wouldn't have mattered.
Exactly.
Okay. Anyway, defense, going back to Bills, Chiefs, I put Bills defense 2,800.
I had a little bit more. I took the Lions defense against Tampa Bay, 3,300, and Tyler took the second highest expensive defense with the 49ers at 3,400.
And I had $200 left in the tank, but I didn't really find anywhere I wanted to use it. So we'll see if that comes back to get me or not.
Excuse me. Oh, that's
Cody has negative 600. No, I'm kidding.
No, because I was checking Tyler's price. It's been messing up my lineup. And I was like, why don't I have $2,100? I need to change something, but I picked the wrong guy. I have $200 remaining after putting Amon-Ra St. Brown back in my lineup.
If you would have totally missed that, I would have loved it.
Yeah, because I accidentally hit Chris Godwin. So Chris Godwin is $1,900 less than Amon-Ra St. Brown. George,
all the accountants out there, remember that.
Anything else you want to talk about?
Make sure you guys get involved and join that DFS group before it's too late and fills up. But thank you guys for listening in, and looking forward to a solid
Yeah, definitely join the DFS. Make sure you're following us at the Couch GMs on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, X, TikTok, all those good places. Reminder, this is not just a seasonal podcast. We're back with you all year. Might be a little break after the Super Bowl just for a couple weeks or two, but we'll be back talking football. We'll be breaking down everything that happens this week, next week. Maybe Tyler, maybe we'll see. Hopefully. Wish him luck. But I'm Cody Roadcap. That is George Kerth, and we will talk to you all next week.